and the men of Israel. Saul and who?
Men.
Saul and the men of Israel. God's chosen people. God's chosen people. God's servants. Saul and God's people were gathered together and pitched near the valley of Elah and set the battle in array against the Philistines. So we have the Philistines on one end and we have God's people on the other end. And the Philistines stood on a mountain on the one side, and Israel stood on the mountain on the other side. And there was a valley between them. And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines, named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. And he had a helmet of brass upon his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass. And he had greaves of brass upon his legs, and a target of brass between his shoulders, and the staff of his spear was like that of a weaver's beam. And his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron, and one bearing a shield went before him. And he stood, and he cried unto the armies of Israel, and said unto them, Why are you come out to set your battle in array? Am I not a Philistine, and ye the servants of Saul? I have a problem with that identification. These are the children of God. But the enemy decides to say, I know who I am. Why even get into a battle? Why all this bloodshed? Let one of us fight. I will fight for my people. You fight for Saul. But these are the children of God. I have a problem with that. But let me read on so we get the context, and we're going to dig a little deeper in. Choose you a man. Choose you a man. He wants to battle. He's battling God's people, but he wants to fight a man. He says, choose ye a man. Let him come down to me. If he's able to fight with me and to kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him, and Goliath here is betting that he will, we've had this description, this awesome description of Goliath, and we'll take a look at that a little deeper. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you'll be my servants. And the Philistine said, I defy the armies of Israel this day to give me a man. I want to fight a man. When the enemy comes, he doesn't knock at your door looking for Jesus Christ. He wants to fight you.
Yes. Amen.
And he says, give me a man that I can fight. He's already had a fight in heaven. He got thrown out. He's already had a fight while Christ was here. He lost. And now today he's still going on with the same foolishness. Give me a man that I might fight him. I know the match is not fair, but I want to fight him anyway. Give me a man that I might fight him. One of those servants of Saul. He said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. Now, I have a problem with our response to sin. I have a problem with my response to sin. We're too timid in this fight. We're too timid in this fight. It's as if we don't have God with us. It's as if we believe we're not servants of God, but we are servants of Saul. It's as if the enemy is right. Here's the response. And when Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and grieved. afraid. Let's take a look at some things. There's too many things to take a look at. We're going to pick some pieces and wait till next week to continue in some other pieces. I understand why Samson would, Goliath would say, servants of Saul. He doesn't see them serving God in the way that you would expect them to serve God. There's context here for us. Take your bulletin and leave it right here at chapter 17. And I just want us to move back to chapter 4. Because you see, the Philistines in 1 Samuel, the Philistines and the Israelites are always going back and forth. I mean, they just can't stop fighting. They're like two brothers or two sisters. There's always a fight between the Philistines and the Israelites. But the Philistines at one point, even though they didn't like the Israelites, understood that the Israelites had a pretty good God. And they were scared of this God. And here's what it says. Take a look for me at chapter 4 of 1 Samuel. And we're going to take a look at, starting at verse 5. But I want to give you context for this. Israel, as is our behavioral pattern, we don't listen to God. And God has to allow things to happen to us to wake us up out of this. That has happened. And now the Philistines have come and they're in a war, and in a specific battle in the war, 4,000 Israelites die. Well, they're dismayed by this, and they regroup and they say, how could God let this happen? And then they have this idea. You know what? Let's get the Ark of the Covenant that has the presence of God and bring it here to the battle with us. That way, God will be with us, and that's a pretty good idea. Let's go and do that. Now, they ought not do that. You don't use God. You have scars on your life right now where you try to use God instead of allowing God to use you. And they bring the ark, and here's what happens. Disclaimer is that they don't win the battle anyway, but I just want to show you what the Philistines think about Israel's God. Verse 5. And when the ark of the covenant of the Lord came into the camp, all Israel shouted with a great shout, so that the earth rang again. And when the Philistines heard the noise of the shout, they just killed 4,000 of these guys, and now they're hearing them celebrate. They said, what meaneth the noise of this great shout in the camp of the Hebrews? And they understood that the ark of the Lord was come into the camp. And the Philistines were afraid. For they said, God. No Israelite is telling them that this is God. They're saying, God is come into the camp. And they say, woe unto us. For there hath not been such a thing heretofore. Only when you heard of these Israelites wandering around the place did you know that God was with them. And now we're faced with the same thing. Woe to us, it says in verse 8. Who shall deliver us out of the hand of these mighty gods? These are the gods that smote the Egyptians with all the plagues in the wilderness. They are terrified of your God. I have news for you. The enemy is terrified of your God. He's lost in heaven. He's lost on earth. And he can only pick a fight with a man. Once you invoke God into the equation, he has a problem with it.